take a timeout.
Hi, everybody. I'm Brian Kenny, and welcome to ESPN Classic's Top 5 Reasons You Can't Blame. From 1990 to 1993, the Buffalo Bills won an unprecedented 4 straight AFC titles. Their high-scoring K-gun offense was triggered by the strong arm of quarterback Jim Kelly and powered by the legs of Thurman Thomas. On defense, pass rusher Bruce Smith led a swarming gang that usually shut down the opposition. In the 1990 and 92 seasons, 10 Bills were selected for the Pro Bowl. Yet for all its weaponry, Buffalo could not win the big game. Before we count down the top 5 reasons you can't blame the Buffalo Bills for losing 4 straight Super Bowls, let's go back to the beginning of the franchise's quest for a title.
Kelly in the shotgun on 2nd and 7. Throws. That's good there. It is complete the read.
The Buffalo Bills were the high-powered offense, the unstoppable team that no one could really contend with.
Kelly for the end zone. Touchdown.
They allowed me to do playground football in the National Football League, and that's exactly what it was.
Behind Kelly's freewheeling style, the Bills led the league in scoring and were the AFC's top seed in the 1990 postseason. After racking up 95 points and 995 yards in 2 playoff victories, Buffalo was favored by a touchdown over the Giants in Super Bowl 25.
Even though they were going to face a Giants team that had allowed the fewest points in the league, you couldn't help but feel that Buffalo was on the verge of something big.
There's arrogance, cockiness, and confidence. We were all 3. I mean, we just didn't feel like we'd be stopped.
By contrast, Bill Parcells' aging Giants, who would field 18 players from their victorious Super Bowl team of the 1986 season, appeared ready to fall.
I can tell you for a fact that Bill Parcells, while addressing his team early in the week, said, when you talk to the media, I want you to just blow smoke up the Bills, you know what, make them seem like the greatest team ever.
You can't say a lot of bad things about them. They do a lot of things well.
I remember talking to Bill Parcells at the beginning of the week. I said, how you going to beat that team? And he goes, and I'll never forget this as long as I live, he goes, well, if they have the ball as long as we do, he goes, they're going to kill us, so I got to figure out a way to shorten the game.
With the Bills up 10-3 in the second quarter, Bruce Smith trapped Giants quarterback Jeff Hostetler in the end zone.
Hostetler on your heat, sacked for the safety.
Late in the first half, the Giants retaliated with a 10-play drive, moving 87 yards.
We wore their butts out. And when you become physically fatigued, you become mentally fatigued. And that caused errors to be made.
Hostetler throws, touchdown!
That touchdown pass to Stephen Baker cut the Giants' deficit to 12-10 at halftime. Taking the second half kickoff, New York continued to play Parcells' possession ball. Their 75-yard drive, which lasted a Super Bowl record 9 minutes and 29 seconds, was kept alive by the tenacity of wide receiver Mark Ingram.
I'm one of the guys that missed a tackle. It was frustrating because we had an opportunity to get them off the field and turn the ball over to our offense.
If I made the tackle in the backfield on Ingram when he caught the ball, they don't go down and score the touchdown.
Touchdown Anderson!
As the fourth quarter wound down, the Bills, trailing 2019, went on a desperation drive and reached the Giants' 29 with 8 seconds left. Scott Norwood was called on to try a game-winning field goal.
Now Norwood tries to kick his longest ever on grass, 47 yards.
Myself and Cornelius Bennett, we just put our heads down on the bench, and when we heard the roar of the crowd, we just kind of looked up at the players, and the players were like, oh, God.
No good. Wide right.
I saw it rise. I looked at it. When you realize it went outside, certainly it's crushing. It's devastating.
The Buffalo Bills were the most talented team in the NFL. It shouldn't have been 20-19 at the time that they lined up to kick that field goal.
In January of 1992, after winning their 4th consecutive AFC East title, the Bills were back in the Super Bowl. Only this time they were underdogs to the high-flying Redskins. Super Bowl 26 had hardly gotten underway when Thurman Thomas missed the first 2 plays because he couldn't find his helmet. The Bills went on to commit 5 turnovers, 4 of which cost them 20 points in a 37-24 rout by the rampaging Capital Gang.
I thought it was really a case where the Bills went into this game mentally all wrong. They assumed, because of how much they were this high-flying offense, that they could just sort of turn it on, and it ran up against a hard-hitting, very physical team that took this punishing approach.
The next season, the Bills and backup quarterback Frank Reich overcame a 35-3 playoff deficit to Houston in the wild card game on Buffalo's way to winning a 3rd straight AFC title. But the team's momentum took a blow in the second quarter of Super Bowl 27 when Dallas knocked Kelly out of the game. Without their leader, it was all downhill for the Bills.
Right going deep for Beebe. Intercepted by Larry Brown.
We ended up having 9 offensive turnovers, and I threw 2 interceptions, and we lost 52-17. I look back on that and I say, how can you go from the highest of highs to the lowest of lows in the course of a month?
In Super Bowl 28, Buffalo again faced Dallas. After leading 13-6 at the half, the Bills imploded 4 plays into the 3rd quarter on a carry by Thomas.
Picked up by Washington. Touchdown, Dallas.
Buffalo's biggest stars came up small in their last 3 Super Bowls. Kelly committed 9 turnovers, and Thomas averaged less than 2 yards per carry and fumbled 3 times.
I didn't have a very good Super Bowl in the last 3, and I take the blame for losing all 3 of those Super Bowls.
None of us did what we had to do to win those games. We all contributed to losing, but we never had that big play that we needed to win one.
If you've managed to lose 4 straight times, then you've taken that achievement to another level. I mean, you've managed to create tragedy out of triumph over and over, and they mastered the art of losing the Super Bowl.
You've now heard the arguments against Marv Levy and company. In a few minutes, we'll make our case by counting down the top 5 reasons you can't blame the Buffalo Bills for losing 4 straight Super Bowls. But first, consider some points in their favor that didn't make the short list. We call them the best of the rest. James Washington. In Super Bowl 28, the Cowboys' free safety led all players with 11 solo tackles, made an interception, forced a fumble, and his 46-yard fumble return for a touchdown ignited a second-half turnaround for Dallas.
James Washington, touchdown Cowboys!
We started second half off with a bang because James Washington made a big play, picked it up, and ran it back for a touchdown.
We always say turnovers and touchdowns. We knew that we had to get turnovers. And as long as our defense is playing well, Emmett's going to rake up the yards.
Our other best of the rest, defense. In each Super Bowl, the Bills ran into a wall. The first was the Giants, led by a brilliant assistant coach whose hold'em tactics are now the stuff of legend.
Bill Belichick is running a 2-man rush against the Buffalo Bills' vaunted spread offense. He's like, Jim Kelly, you can have all the time you want to throw the ball. But fact of the matter is, I got 9 guys drop back. The space that you're going to have to fit it in, no one could do it.
I went out in the backfield sometime and had 2 or 3 people on me. So they did a great job of scheming, of trying to get pressure on Jim and try to take me out of the ball game.
Although the Bills didn't turn the ball over against the Giants, over the next 3 Super Bowls, they committed 17 turnovers, 13 of which led to the opposition scoring 79 points.
That's Norton. Who else? Give him a touchdown.
The 4 years the Bills went to the Super Bowl, their defenses were ranked in order 8th, 27th, 12th, and 27th. And the defenses of the teams that beat them had defenses ranked 2nd, 3rd, 1st, and 10th.
Unheralded quarterbacks. Both Jeff Hostetler and Mark Rippon came up big. In Super Bowl 25, backup Giants quarterback Hostetler played mistake-free as Phil Simms' replacement, completing 20 of 32 passes for 222 yards under a battering Buffalo assault. In the second quarter, he made a pivotal play by not fumbling when Bruce Smith sacked him in the end zone.
I felt a big old hand on my wrist and knew that I was in trouble and did everything I could to bring the ball back in. When you look at it after and years after, you realize what a huge play it was.
Had Buffalo recovered it for a touchdown, that would have been a 17-3 Buffalo lead. No team in Super Bowl history has ever lost a game in which it led by 14 or more points.
In 1991, Rippon, the Redskins quarterback, had the best season of his 11-year career. He continued his outstanding play in Super Bowl 26, dissecting the Bills for 292 yards passing and 2 touchdowns.
Going deep. He's got Clark in the end zone. Touchdown.
Rippon was not a star by any means, and he played just sound enough, solid enough to allow a superior Redskins team in many other ways to win the ballgame.
We're going to Disney World!
In a game like this, to play at that level, you can only say, hey, I got it done when it counted. Whether you're Jeff Hostetler or Mark Rippon, something that you can say for the rest of your life, they can't take away from you.
All right, we just got started. Here now is reason number 4. There's no place like home, especially in Buffalo.
We knew it was really difficult for teams to come in here and win in their own building.
Here in Buffalo, weather is always a story. Wednesday's high was -1. Today we're up to a balmy 11 degrees.
In their 4 AFC championship seasons under head coach Marv Levy, the Bills were 7-0 at home in the playoffs, where the average temperature was 31 degrees. The coldest contest was the 1993 AFC divisional playoff, when the mercury was 0 at game time.
Man, it is cold.
Well, the Los Angeles Raiders certainly not delighted to be playing in the cold weather.
One of the things we pointed out was a saying that I had gotten from my father, who had been in the Marine Corps: when it's too tough for them, it's just right for us.
The Bills' weather advantage melted in their 4 Super Bowls, where the average temperature was 69 degrees.
Now, Super Bowl 26 was played in a city much colder than Buffalo, Minneapolis, where daytime temperatures ran in the teens. You factor in the winds, it felt like the single digits on your skin, plus a little snow. Good recipe for the Bills to win, except they play in a dome where the temperatures are controlled. We're in the 70s. Weather like that, we lose again.
Rippon hands to Riggs over the right side. Touchdown, Washington Redskins.
There's no question that in Buffalo, the weather was a weapon for us. And now all of a sudden you're in a 72-degree dome stadium, and now we've just lost one of our biggest allies.
A jinx of geography. Remotely situated on Lake Erie, Buffalo provided an environment that worked against the Bills' championship aspirations. One of the smallest markets in pro sports, the city has never fielded a world champion, although it did win 2 AFL titles in the mid-'60s.
There's something weird about Buffalo. The Jumbotron fell in the new stadium. Our leading scorer for the Sabres one year was named Satan, Timothy McVeigh. Arguably our greatest domestic terrorist. He's from the Buffalo area.
Sometimes between comedy and tragedy, the difference is just a fine line. The Bills in the Super Bowl, that may lie somewhere in between.
4 straight Super Bowl losses. How do you make that worse? Best player in franchise history? Crime of the century.
Whatever intangible quality the Bills seemed to lack, their opposition had in spades. New York, Washington, and Dallas, all glamour cities, account for 11 Super Bowl titles.
With the star you have, man, it changes everything. Perception and the way that you're looked at is different, because the Dallas Cowboys is such a powerful brand that when you're tied to it, I mean, it's just an awesome thing.
Being a part of an identity is one of the factors that really motivates the players. What community, what team, what the logo is, what the history is. That is an important part of your self-concept, your self-identity as an athlete.
If a city's size and stature are keys to Super Bowl success, then Buffalo never had a chance. Between 1984 and 1993, the AFC lost 10 NFL championships to teams from larger markets.
I think it became maybe even a little more of a distraction for them than it would have been for another team that was used to this process, i.e. the New York Giants.
Hi, this is Chris Hale from Buffalo Bills interviewing Julie Brown. This is what we go to the Super Bowl for.
There's no question there was the temptation for every player on our team. This is now your time. You better get it while you can, because we're going to go back after this game's over to obscurity in Western New York.
With 3 strong reasons in the books, here's reason number 2. Jimmy Johnson and Jerry Jones took over a dismal Dallas team in February of 1989, and 4 years later dominated the Bills in the Super Bowl.
Emmett on the toss. Touchdown.
There is no God. They already had the whole Tom Landry era. Now they're reloading? That's effed up.
There's not many teams that can have a guy that's catching 100 balls, a guy who's running for 1,600 yards, and a quarterback whose completion percentage is one of the best in the history of the NFL.
I'm a little humbled by the fact that Michael and Emmett and I are kind of the ones singled out. None of us had enjoyed any success without the other, and so our success together paralleled the team's success.
Bursting with talent, swagger, and hubris, the newly renovated Cowboys reflected the personality of their city and their coach.
Jimmy had no loyalty to anything or anybody, just winning. Jimmy would always say, I don't need any friends, I need wins.
We had been last in the league the year before I got there, and then last my first year. There was a lot of pressure to get the Cowboys back on top, and for that reason, I expected their very best.
And Johnson got it with speed and youth.
They could run everybody down that we had on the field. They had some speed. When the linebackers and the safeties, those were the defenses that were the difference for us.
I don't mean to oversimplify, but the Dallas Cowboys of Troy Aikman and Michael Irvin and Emmitt Smith was a great football team. The Buffalo Bills, they were a good team, but they weren't as good as the team that they were playing.
Eva's stirring rendition of the national anthem prior to Super Bowl 25, she stood with her back to the Bills and her voice and heart to the Giants.
Whitney Houston looks at the New York Giants as if she is offering out, the energy of all pophood and all America to that.
There was bad karma right even before the opening kickoff. I think there's no question that she set the tone.
Houston for singing the national anthem and looking right at the New York Giants while she's doing it to say, go get them, boys. I'm from Newark. Are you kidding? Some of the guys were salivating, almost like Pavlov's dog. They were just waiting for her to ring the bell. She's a huge Giant fan. Huge Giant fan.
Instead of recovering from the crushing defeat by Whitney's Giants, the Bills seemed to slip deeper into what would be their 0-for-4 malaise. It began with 5 turnovers against the Redskins, then 9 more in Super Bowl 27.
That's the one time when you can almost see the whole team's attitude, particularly offensively, our whole attitude just crumbled at the same time.
I think the losing on the world stage must have crawled into the psyche. A little bit of that, oh God, can it happen again? No, we're good, right?
Well, catastrophe theory in sports psychology says that under certain conditions, when a game is very, very important, it's almost like a perfect storm. That pressure comes together and you make a few mistakes, it becomes a catastrophe. And before you know it, you have a blowout.
The Tasker, and he fumbles. Not another.
It was astonishing how much this team unraveled. I think this was the classic case of the Bills really carrying the burden of snapping this losing streak. The burden was too much for them to handle.
In the rematch with Dallas, the Bills led at the start of the second half. But another key turnover was converted into points for the opposition, turning Buffalo's Super Bowl dreams into one long nightmare.
In many ways, I think sports psychology theory might say that it was that first game against the New York Giants that really set everything else up. It was like a deck of cards where it starts falling and the whole house falls down.
I think that the Bills were fatally wounded after that first game, because that was the game that they were supposed to win and which they understood it was just going to get harder and harder. Because they had finally reached the top of the mountain and they weren't good enough.
Well, there you have it, the top 5 reasons you can't blame the Buffalo Bills for losing 4 straight Super Bowls. I'm Brian Kenny. Thanks for joining us.